We're gonna continue reading some back context for Atrahasis, and maybe 1-2 more minutes before we start reading Gilgamesh again, because there's like introductions for each of these stories inside of the Myths of Mesopotamia by Stephanie Daly. It's brought to you by Oxford Classics, and I already read a little bit of Atrahasis. I'm gonna continue. Just the introduction. I already read the story myself. I thought it was good. I would actually give it a 4 out of 5, whatever, 3.5, 3, something around there, to be honest. Let's see where we were. Atrahasis in history. According to one version of the Sumerian king list, in the years just before the flood swept over the earth, Ubara-Tutu, who is named as the father of Atrahasis and Gilgamesh, was king of Shuruppak, modern Tel Farah, in central southern Mesopotamia, where some of the earliest writings known in the whole world have been unearthed. I think I've read that before. I read that. Oh wow. I don't know if I read that, but that's crazy. I feel like I read these pages. I'll reread it, whatever. Who is named after the father of Atrahasis and Gilgamesh, was king of Shuruppak, modern Tel Farah, in central southern Mesopotamia, where some of the earliest writings known in the whole world have been unearthed. According to a different version of the Sumerian king list, Atrahasis, called there by his Sumerian name Zisudra, himself ruled the city Shuruppak, preceded by his father, who was named like the city Shuruppak, and who was presumably regarded as the eponymous ancestor of the citizens there. Eponymous? What is eponymous? I brought my laptop for definitions. Giving their name to something. Okay. Or named after a particular person. A wisdom. He is preceded in that list by Ubara-Tutu, and so was not the first king of Shuruppak. Interesting. A wisdom composition known as the Instructions of Shuruppak is now attested on clay tablets from the early dynastic period in the early 3rd millennium BC, and contains sage advice given by Shuruppak and his son Ziusudra. Thus, Atrahasis was a notable figure at the dawn of history, and literary tradition was attached to him at an extremely early period. Oh wow. The names of Atrahasis. It means extra wise. Huh. Extra wise is the naming of his name in Atrahasis. He is Ut-Napishtim and Uta-Nishtim in Gilgamesh. Wait, really? A name which can mean he found life. Sumerian Ziusudra is an approximate translation of Akkadian Ut Napishtim, together with his epithet, in which the element Sudrak considered corresponds to Atrahasis' epithet Ruku, the far distant. The name used by Berosus for the survivor of the flood is Zudros, probably a phonetic rendering of Zusudra. Prometheus, Deucalion's father, may possibly be an approximate Greek translation of Atrahasis, and it is just possible that an abbreviation of Uta-Nahishtim was pronounced Noah in Palestine from very early times. Atrahasis is also found as the name or epithet of a man who features in a Hittite story about Kumarbi. It has been suggested that the name Ulysses, used by the Romans for Odysseus, comes from the Hittite Ulias as a translation of Atrahasis' epithet, the far distant, and that the names Odysseus and Altis may be based on a pronunciation of the logogram. Fuck, I'm losing it. It has been said that the name Ulysses, used by the Romans, come from Hittite Ulysses as a translation of Atrahasis' epithet, the far distant, and that the names Odysseus and Altis may be based on a pronunciation of the logogram for Ut Napishtim, which is Ud Z. The name of or epithet Atrahasis is used for the skillful god of craftsmanship, Kothar, Wahasis, in Ugaritic mythology, and is abbreviated to Kauser in the Greek account of Syrian origins, related by Philo of Byblos. I don't know where I was. A similar abbreviation is used in the name of the Islamic age Al-Qidar, also called Al-Qidir, who guarded the fountain of life and gave water from it to King Sakar, meaning rock, who thus became immortal. This episode is related in one of the Arabian Nights to the Gilgamesh of Islamic narrative, Bulukiya, who, being traveled through many lands, lost his faithful advisor Afan in a fruitless attempt to obtain the ring of Suleiman, with which he might travel to the fountain of life and drink water of immortality. The name Al-Qadir here bears a new etymology, the Greek one. Al-Qadir is a holy man of Islam and is buried at Baniyas on the Golan Heights, where a tributary of the Jordan River gushes out of a rock. In all these appellations, it is impossible to distinguish a real name from an epithet. The text. Clay tablets inscribed with the Old Babylonian version of the epic can be dated around 1700 BC. Each tablet is divided into 8 columns, 4 on the obverse and 4 on the reverse. Some pages in late Assyrian versions discovered in the palace library of the great king appear to follow the Old Babylonian version very closely, but with additions and considerable I always think I'll be hearing shit. Some passages in late Assyrian versions discovered in the palace library of the great king Assurbanipal appear to follow the Old Babylonian version fairly closely, but with additions and considerable alteration in phrasing and vocabulary as far as can be ascertained from the small quantity of text that survives. The author The author, Ipikaya, previously misread Kuaya, Nuraya, and Kasapaya. Rarely is an author named for such an early text. Ipikaya was writing during the reign of Ammi-Saduqa, king of Babylon, 1702 to 1682 BC. On 8-column tablets, with each column comprising about 55 lines, and he probably lived in Sippar, where the tablets almost certainly originated. Ipikaya was presumably the compiler and arranger of traditional material, and the extent of his personal contribution to it cannot be assessed. To understand his role, we may look to Enkiduya, Anna, daughter of Sargon of Akkad, 2390 to 2335 BC, holder of the most prestigious temple office of Uru, and traditionally the authoress of the Sumerian collection of temple hymns. We now know much of that work existed long before her lifetime, was revised and augmented after her death. This did not undermine her credibility as an author in antiquity, but rather enhanced it. At Sippar, the temple of the sun god Shamash was particularly famous in Old Babylonian times when Ipikaya lived there for its cloister of blue-blooded priestesses who were not allowed to bear children. This version of Atrahasis may have been composed in order to justify their enforced infertility, since it presents the myth as justifying a social phenomenon which was prevalent at that period. Creation of man. According to Atrahasis, the mother goddess Mami, with the help of the wise god Ea, created men out of clay mixed with the blood of the slain god called Iwawela. Man's purpose in life was to relieve the gods of hard labor. This account of man's creation may be compared with that in the Epic of Creation, in which Marduk used the blood of Kingu, the evil leader of the enemy gods whom he had slain, to create mankind with the help of Ea. Clay is not mentioned, and no birth goddess takes part, but the purpose of man's creation is again to toil on the gods' behalf. Neither account mentions the creation of animals, which is an important preliminary to man's creation in Genesis, priestly source. The account in Genesis describes God using earth, Adamah, to create the first man, Adam, animating him with the breath of life. In Hesiod's Works and Days, written in Boeotia in Greek around the late 8th century BC, the gods incite the Smythe god Hephaestus. Where's my cat? Moon dust? What are you doing? Fucking around. I was fucking around. Hephaestus, to make Pandora out of clay and water. Both in Greece and Mesopotamia, deities associated with birth and fertility are also patrons of mining, smelting, and coppersmith's craft, because they create new forms from basic materials. The flood. Atrahasis, the hero of the flood story, was a citizen of Shuruppak in lower Mesopotamia. An extensive flood as a natural event sometimes took place in that region, where the Euphrates and Spate can overflow and spill across the intervening land into the lower lying Tigris, which itself often breaks its own bank in southern Spate. But a flood would be impossible on a similar scale in Palestine, Syria, Anatolia, or Greece. Such floods occur quite commonly in Iraq, and strata of silt deposits on early dynastic sites of the 4th millennium BC found there by archaeologists can be interpreted as recording various different floods in remote antiquity. That evidence does not, however, disclose whether one particular flood was more catastrophic than others. It only shows that no unusual break in cultural continuity was caused by such a deposit, and that the layer flood of silt found in excavations at Ur is certainly much earlier in date than the flood deposit found at Shuruppak. No flood deposits can be found in 3rd millennia strata, and Archbishop Usher's date for the flood of 2349 BC, which was calculated by using numbers in Genesis at first value, and which did not recognize how highly schematic biblical chronology is for such early times, is now out of the question. Damn. Oh, fuck. My cat scared me. Oh, Jesus. Oh, fuck. I almost had a heart attack. Jesus. Cat, chill out. In Atrahasis, the flood was sent by the gods in order to reduce... Stop. She's like all over my laptop. To reduce overpopulation, a situation which has been compared with an early Greek poem, the Cyperia, loosely attributed to Homer in antiquity and known mainly from allusions and quotations, in which Zeus planned to reduce overpopulation by war. In Atrahasis, war is not used for this purpose. In this priestly account of the flood in Genesis, and in Ovid's Metamorphosis, man's wickedness is the cause of divine anger which results in the flood. In Gilgamesh, the flood story is reused out of its original context to mark the time in history after which it was no longer possible for a mortal to win immortality. The flood is also important for Mesopotamian tradition because it marks the end of the period when true sages lived on earth and brought to mankind the arts of civilization from the gods. Later, post-Diluvian sages were sometimes authors of literary figures who worked for known kings of historical times, but they were not regarded as immortal and were additional to the original seven. In Era and Ishum, the god Marduk claims responsibility for sending the flood and the seven sages, thus adapting two traditional themes which were closely connected. There are indications that the story of the flood, as related in the Old Babylonian Atrahasis, and with considerable variation in the Ninevite ascension of Gilgamesh, was not the only one in circulation in Babylonia. Berosus, writing from Babylonia for the Greeks in the 3rd century BC, includes some details which are not known elsewhere except in the priestly account in Genesis. The latter may have been composed or finalized in the early Persian period, late 6th to early 5th centuries BC. Notable items are that the survivor of the flood, Zuthros, Noah, is the 10th antediluvian king in both Berosus and Genesis, priestly source. That the month in which the flood happened is named, and that the 10 antediluvian kings whom Berosus cites ruled for 432,000 years, and Genesis, priestly source, for 1656 years. So the two accounts may originally have shared a common chronological scheme. Berosus' account of the flood story must be derived from a Sumerian version of the story, since he names the hero as Zuthros rather than Atrahasis or Ut-Napishtim, and this version connects the flood with geological information. The Sumerian king list, compiled in the early 2nd millennium, includes a brief note about the flood, which is in that text divides dynasties with enormous lengths of reign from more realistic numbers. A Sumerian story of Zuthra and the flood, still largely incomplete, appears to be a relatively late composition based on a Akkadian version of the story, and it lists the diluvian cities in the same way as the Sumerian king list does. An Akkadian account of the flood has also been found at Ugarit, a late Bronze Age city on the Syrian coast. The people who decipher these things are so smart, and to pinpoint, oh, it must be from this version. Why? Because they use this name, and this name only comes from that place. That's crazy. I don't know. That's smart, you know? I would have found one and been like, oh, that's the version. Yep. I wouldn't have been like, does it come from that place? Very cool. Where are we? It is probable that these ancient Near Eastern flood stories are versions of a tale which originated in Lower Mesopotamia, though not necessarily in a single devastation. The variety of detail found in them illustrates the kaleidoscopic character of the folktale, in which the certain basic elements are widely used in new combinations and are adapted to national interests and different literary settings. For instance, in Genesis, the dove brings back to Noah an olive leaf, which belongs to the flora of the Palestine. Olive trees do not grow in Mesopotamia. Although Atrahasis emphasizes that, see? Although Atrahasis emphasizes the catastrophic nature of the flood, the ancient Babylonians were well aware that not everything was destroyed. Uran Ishun makes it clear that the city of Sippar survived, a belief echoed by Berosus, who says that ancient writings were buried there before the flood and later retrieved. That's crazy. Oper 1903. Various stories relating a catastrophic flood are told by classical authors, focusing upon cities which lie far beyond Mesopotamia, featuring Ogyges or Deucalion as the hero who survived. Lucian of Samosata, a Syrian Samsat, who wrote the Syrian goddess in the 2nd century AD, describes a tradition popular in Hierapolis, modern Manbij, in central Syria, in which Deucalion was the hero, and it was claimed locally that the flood waters vanished down a natural cleft in the bedrock directly beneath the temple of the great goddess. This claim gave the city a focal role in formative cosmic events and enhanced its prestige and authority. Apollodorus, in the 1st century BC, relates the tale of Deucalion, son of Prometheus, who survived a flood that began in Thessaly in a floating chest or ark, and after 9 days and nights drifted on to Mount Parnassus. The account links the flood, as does Genesis and the Sumerian king list, to early genealogies. Ovid in Metamorphoses 8 alluded to an account of the flood from Phrygia, which can be traced back scattered allusions and a motif on coins to 2 cities, Apamea, Kibotos, and Iconium, Konyan, 2 major caravan centers of extreme antiquity. At Apamea, the local hill claimed to be Mount Ararat, where the ark came to rest. Wow, those words are so hard. All these flood stories may be explained as deriving from the one Mesopotamian original used in travelers' tales for over 2,000 years, along the great caravan routes of Western Asia, translated, embroidered, and adapted according to local tastes to give a myriad of divergent versions, a few of which have come down to us. However, the possibility of several independent origins cannot be dismissed, for the idea of a universal flood may well have arisen to explain observations in different places of marine fossils in rocks high above sea level, at a time when there was no conception of how geological change took place, nor of how vast was the timescale of evolution. Moreover, when the creation of man was generally supposed to have accompanied the creation of the earth on its present form, an enormous flood which may be by chance survived would be the only way to account for the presence of such marine fossils and may have been thought up by more than one inquiring mind. Although the flood story was known at Ugarit in Syria and Bokakoy in central Anatolia in the late Bronze Age, it may not have survived the Dark Ages in that area. And so, maybe a late corner into Greek mythology, for it is not mentioned by Homer or Hesiod. In Phrygia, where the heroes named on coins as Noah, the tale may have become popular when Jews settled there, and may have been attached to a later date to heroes of greater antiquity. Where flood stories are found in other parts of the world, missionaries and early Christian travelers may have disseminated them. There is no reason to suppose that they are indigenous. Overpopulation and mortality. When the gods created the first primeval male and female human beings, they did not allot a lifespan for them. This meant that everyone remained alive for centuries, continuing to reproduce until the earth was overcrowded. People died only when the gods were forced to relieve the pressure by sending intermittently plague, famine, or flood. Scholars now agree that damaged text near the end of the epic refers to the gods' decision to institute death as a normal end to human life. The restoration is supported by a newly discovered piece of Sumerian text. This late decision rectified the mistake the gods made in the initial creation of man. In OBV, the old Babylonian version, Gilgamesh Siduri refers to this decision. The gods also decided to prevent some people breeding and to institute infant and child mortality. That's crazy. Weird that stories like this exist, because it's real life. Magic shouldn't exist and all that. So it's interesting. I know what happened was it was probably just a flood and people thought it was like a punishment, But really, they should have moved out. Tablet 11 of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh spoke to him, to Utnapishtim, the far distant. I look at you, Utnapishtim, and your limbs are no different. You are just like me. Indeed. You are not at all different. You are just like me. This is going to get crazy, alright? We got 50 pages. I feel the urge to prove myself against you, to pick a fight. Why? You lie on your back. How you came to stand in the gods' assembly and sought eternal life. Utnapishtim spoke to him, to Gilgamesh. Let me reveal to you a closely guarded matter, Gilgamesh, and let me tell you the secret of the gods. Shuruppak is a city that you yourself know, situated on the bank of the Euphrates. That city was already old when the gods within it decided that the great gods should make a flood. There was Anu, their father, warrior Elil, their counselor. Ninurta was their chamberlain, Ennugi, their canal controller. Far-sighted Ea swore the oath of secrecy with them. So he repeated their speech to a reed hut. Reed hut, brick wall, brick wall. Listen, reed hut, and pay attention, brick wall. This is the message. Mana Shuruppak, son of Ubara Tutu. Dismantle your house, build a boat. Ubara Tutu? Isn't that Atrahasis? Yeah. That's Atrahasis. That's Noah. Build a boat. Leave possessions. Search out living things. Reject chattels and save lives. Put aboard the seed of all living things into the boat. That's crazy. This is like older than Noah. Whoa. The boat that you are to build shall have her dimensions in proportion. Oh my God. Her width and length shall be in harmony. Roof her like the Apsu. I realized and spoke to my master Ea. Dude, my mind. Oh my God. Dude, that's crazy. You know, I believe in the Bible, but damn. To think there's something older than the Bible is insane. It's just crazy, bro. Like, before everything, before God. This is the earliest story. Like, human remains only go as far back as, like, battles. We don't know the first battle. You know, when we look back in history, we just see a random battle, you know. It's crazy. Well, and then before that, it's like, you know, we used to be apes or whatever. Homo erectus, whatever. I'm trying to find where it was. I realized and spoke to my master, Ea. I have paid attention to the words that you have spoken this way. Did I skip anything? My master and I shall act upon them. But how can I explain myself to the city, the men and the elders? Ea made his voice heard and spoke. He said to me, his servant, you shall speak to them thus. I think that Elil has rejected me, and so I cannot stay in your city, and I cannot set foot on Elil's land again. I must go down to the Apsu and stay with my master Ea. Then he will shower abundance upon you, a wealth of fowl, a treasure of fish, prosperity, a harvest. In the morning cakes, darkness. In the evening, a rain of wheat. Heaviness he will shower upon you. When the first light of dawn appeared, the country gathered round me. The carpenter brought his axe. The reed worker brought his stone. The young man, Okum, children carried the bitumen. The poor fetched what was needed. On the 5th day I laid down her form. On 1 acre was her circumference, 10 poles each the height of her walls. Her top edge was likewise 10 poles all around. Oh my God, they're building the ark. Oh my gosh. Wow. Bitumen. What's a bitumen? I bet they have a glossary. Whoa. I just found a bunch of hieroglyphics. Flood weapon. They don't have bitumen. Why? They probably have Enkidu. Gilgamesh. Noah. I can't find Noah. Is there like a second block here or something? There's nothing. What's he reading? Myths of Mesopotamia. There's a creation, the flood, Gilgamesh, and other stories. But we're reading Gilgamesh today, and we will not be reading the flood. I've already read it. I've already read creation. So we're on Gilgamesh now. Anyway, what's bitumen? We're in tablet 8. I think it's the last tablet. It's like a viscous constituent of petroleum, I guess. It looks like whenever we finish Gilgamesh, we're gonna reread it, but we're gonna reread the old Babylonian version. So I'll do that. I don't care. I don't know where I was. Wait, that's tablet 10. Alright, let's do this. Bitumen.
Bitumen.
Yeah, that's right. I laid down her structure, drew it out, gave her 6 decks, divided her into 7. Her middle I divided into 9, drove the water pegs into her middle. I saw to the paddles and put down what was needed. 3 sar of bitumen I poured into the kiln. 3 sar of pitch I poured into the inside. 3 sar of oil they fetched the workmen who carried the baskets. Not counting the sar of oil which the dust soaked up, the boatmen stowed away 2 more sar of oil. I slaughtered oxen. I sacrificed sheep every day. I gave the workmen ale and beer to drink. Oil and wine as if they were river water. They made a feast like the New Year's Day festival. When the sun rose, I provided hand oil. When the sun went down, the boat was complete. The launching was very difficult. Launching rollers had to be fetched from above to below. 2/3 of it stood clear of the water line. I loaded her with everything. There was loaded her with all the silver, loaded her with all the gold, loaded her with all the seed of all living things, all of them. I put on board the boat of all my kith and kin, put on board cattle from open country, wild beasts from open country, all kinds of craftsmen. Shamash had fixed the hour. In the morning cakes, darkness. In the evening a rain of wheat, heaviness. I shall shower down, enter into the boat and shut your door. That hour arrived. In the morning, darkness. In the evening, heaviness, shower down. I saw the shape of the storm. The storm was terrifying to see. I went aboard the boat and closed the door. To seal the boat, I handed over the floating palace with her cargo of Puzu, Amuru, the boatman. When the first light of dawn appeared, a black cloud came up from the base of the sky. Adad kept rumbling inside it. Shula and Hanish were marching ahead, marched as chamberlains over mountain and country. Erakil pulled out the mooring poles. Nenurta marched on and made the weir overflow. The Anunnaki had to carry torches. They lit up the land with their brightness. What's a weir? A low dam built across a river to raise the level of stream and regulate flow. The Anunnaki had to carry torches. They lit up the land with their brightness. The calm before the storm god came over the sky. Everything light turned to darkness. On the first day, the tempest rose up, blew swiftly, and brought the flood weapon. Like a battle force of the destructive Kasusu weapon passed over the people. No man could see his fellow, nor could people be distinguished from the sky. Even the gods were afraid of the flood weapon. They withdrew. They went up to the heaven of Anu. The gods cowered like dogs crouched by an outside wall. Ishtar screamed like a woman giving birth. The mistress of the gods' sweet of voice was wailing. Has that time really returned to clay because I spoke evil in the gods' assembly? How could I have spoken such evil in the gods' assembly? I should have ordered a battle to destroy my people. I myself gave birth to them. They are my own people. Yet they fill the sea like fish spawn. The gods of the Anunnaki were weeping with her. The gods humble sat there weeping. Their lips were closed and covered with scab. For 6 days and 7 nights, the wind blew. Flood and tempest overwhelmed the land. Hold on. My cat be freaking me out, bro. The gods were crying? Bro, the gods did it. What are you talking about? The gods humbled sat there crying, weeping, humbled? Their lips were closed and covered with scab. For 6 days and 7 nights the wind blew, flood, and tempest overwhelmed the land. When the 7th day arrived, the tempest, flood, and onslaught, which had struggled like a woman in labor, blew themselves out. The sea became calm, the Imulu wind grew quiet, the flood held back. I looked at the weather, silence regained, for all mankind had returned to clay. He survived the flood. Gilgamesh survived the flood, the lions, he survived Umbaba, he survived, the thing that lived inside the pine forest. I know where it lives now. It lives in the pine forest. Not anymore. He destroyed it. He went after the bullhorn. Oh. Not bad. Not bad at all. The floodplain was flat as a roof. I opened a porthole and light fell on my cheeks. I bent down, then sat. I wept. My tears ran down my cheeks. I looked for banks, for limits to the sea. Areas of land were emerging everywhere. The boat had come to rest on Mount Nemush. The mountain of Nemush held the boat fast and did not let it budge. The first and second day, the mountain Nemush held the boat fast and did not let it budge. The third and fourth day, the mountain Nemush held the boat fast and did not let it budge. The fifth and sixth day, the mountain Nemush held the boat fast and did not let it budge. When the 7th day arrived, I put it out and released the dove. The dove went and came back, for no perching place was visible to it, and it turned round. I put it out and released the swallow. The swallow went, it came back, for no perching place was visible to it, and it turned round. I put it out and released the raven. The raven went and saw the waters receding, and then it came back, right? No, it didn't. It says, and it ate, preened, lifted its tail, and did not turn round. Then I put everything out to the four winds, and I made myself a sacrifice. Set out a Circinu offering open upon the mountain peak. Arranged the jars 7 and 7. Into the bottom of them I poured essences of reeds, wine, and myrtle. The gods smelt the fragrance. The gods smelt the pleasant fragrance. The gods like flies gathered over the sacrifice. As soon as the mistress of the gods arrived, she raised the great flies which Anu had made to please her. Behold, O gods, I shall never forget the significance of my lapis lazuli necklace. I shall remember these times, and I shall never forget. Let other gods come to the Circinu offering, but let Elul not come to the Circinu offering, because he did not consult before imposing the flood, and consigned my people to destruction. As soon as Elul arrived, he saw the boat. Elul was furious, filled with anger at the Igigi gods. What sort of life survived? No man should have lived through the destruction. Ninurta made his voice heard and spoke. He said to the warrior Elul, who other than Ea would have done such a thing? For Ea can do everything. Ea made his voice heard and spoke. He said to the warrior Elul, you are the sage of the gods, warrior. See, so how could you fail to consult and impose the flood? Punish the sinner for his sin, punish the criminal for his crime, but ease off, let work not cease, be patient, let not. Instead of your imposing a flood, let a lion come up and diminish the people. Instead of your imposing a flood, let a wolf come up and diminish the people. Instead of your imposing a flood, let famine be imposed and lessen the land. Instead of your imposing a flood, let error rise up and savage the people. I did not disclose the secret of the great gods. I just showed Atrahasis a dream, and thus he heard the secret of the gods. Now the advice that prevailed was his advice. Elul came up into the boat, and seized my hand and led me up. He led up my woman and made her kneel down by my side. He touched our foreheads, stood between us, and blessed us. Until now, Ut-Napishtim was mortal, but henceforth Ut-Napishtim and his woman shall be as we gods are. Ut-Napishtim shall dwell far off at the mouth of the rivers. They took me and made me dwell far off at the mouth of the rivers. So now, who can gather the gods on your behalf, Gilgamesh? That you too may find eternal life which you seek. For a start, you must not sleep for 6 days and 7 nights. This is how he becomes immortal? I have to not sleep for 7 days, 7 nights. 6 days. As soon as he was sitting, his head between his knees, sleep breathed over him like a fog. Ut-Napishtim spoke to his wife. Look at the young man who wants eternal life. Sleep breath breathes over him like a fog. His wife spoke to him. To Ut-Napishtim, the far distant. Touch him and let the man wake up. Let him go back in peace the way he came. Go back to his country, through the great gate through which he once left. Ut-Napishtim spoke to his wife. Man behaves badly. He will behave badly towards you. For a start, bake a daily portion for him. Put it each time by his head, and mark on the wall the days that he sleeps. She baked a daily portion for him, put it each time by his head, and marked on the wall for him the days that he slept. His first day's portion was dried out. The second was going bad. The third was soggy. The fourth had white mold on it. The fifth had discolored. The sixth was stinking. The seventh, at that moment he touched him, and the man woke up. Gilgamesh said to Ut-Napishtim, the far distance, "No sooner had sleep come upon me than you touched me straight away and roused me." Ut-Napishtim spoke to him to Gilgamesh. "Look, Gilgamesh, count your daily portions, that the number of days you slept may be proved to you. Your first day's ration is dried out. The second is going bad. The third is soggy. The fourth has white mold on. The fifth has discolored. The sixth is stinking. The seventh, at that moment you woke up." Gilgamesh spoke to him to Ut-Napishtim, the far distant. "How? Oh, how could I have done it, Ut-Napishtim? Wherever can I go? The snatchers have blocked my routes. Death is waiting in my bedroom, and wherever I set my foot, death is there too." Ut-Napishtim spoke to him, to Ub-Shanabi the boatman. "Ub-Shanabi the quay will cast you out. The ferry will reject you. Be deprived of your side at whose side you once went. The man whom you led, filthy hair fetters his body. Skins have ruined the beauty of his flesh. Take him, Uru-Shanabi, bring him to a washbowl, and let him wash in water his filthy hair as clean as possible. Let him throw away his skins, and let the sea carry them off. Let his body soak until it's fresh. Put a new headband on his head. Have him wear a robe as a proud garment until he comes to his city, until he reaches his journey's end. The garment shall now not discolor, but stay absolutely new, because it's blessed." What a crazy story. Huh. Interesting. Uru-Shanabi took him and brought him to a washbowl, and he washed in water his filthy hair as clean as possible. He threw away his skins, and the sea carried them off. His body was soaked until it was fresh. He put a new headband on his head. He wore a robe as a proud garment until he came to his city, until he reached his journey's end. The garment would not discolor and stay absolutely new. Gilgamesh and Uru-Shanabi embarked on the boat. They cast off the Migilu boat and sailed away. The wife spoke to him, to Ut-Napishtim, the far distant. Gilgamesh came, weary, striving. What will you give him to take back to his country? And Gilgamesh came out there, raised the pole. He brought the boat near the shore. Ut-Napishtim spoke to him, to Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, you came, weary, striving. What can I give you to take back to your country? Let me reveal a closely guarded matter, Gilgamesh, and let me tell you the secret of the gods. There is a plant whose root is like camel thorn, whose thorn, like a rose's, will spike your hands. If you yourself can win the plant, you will find rejuvenation. When Gilgamesh heard this, he opened the pipe. He tied heavy stones to his feet. They dragged him down into the Apsu, and when he saw the plant, he took the plant himself. It spiked his hands. He cut the heavy stones from his feet. The sea threw him up onto its shore. Gilgamesh spoke to him, to Uru-Shanabi the boatman. Uru-Shanabi, this plant is to cure a crisis. With it a man may win the breath of life. I shall take it back to Uruk, the sheepfold. I shall give it to an elder to eat and to try it out, the plant. Its name shall be, an old man grows into a young man. I too shall eat it and turn into the young man that I once was. At 20 leagues they ate their ration. At 30 leagues they stopped for the night. Gilgamesh saw a pool whose water was cool, and went down into the water and washed. A snake smelt the fragrance of the plant. It came up silently and carried off the plant, and it took it took it away. It shed its scaly skin. Thereupon Gilgamesh sat down and wept. Oh. His tears flowed over his cheeks. Oh, fuck. He spoke to Ur-Shanabi the boatman. Bro, you saw how easy he got that plant? Just go back in and go get another one. Go get a couple this time. For what purpose, Ur-Shanabi, have my arms grown weary? For what purpose was the blood inside me so red? I did not gain an advantage for myself. I have given the advantage to the lion of the ground. Now the current will carry 20 leagues away. While I was opening the pipe, arranging the gear, I found a door-thong, which must have been there as an omen for me. I shall give up, and I have left the boat on the shore. At 20 leagues, they ate their ration. At 30 leagues, they stopped for the night. They reached to Uruk the sheepfold. Gilgamesh spoke to him, to Ur-Shanabi the boatman. Go up to the wall of Uruk, Ur-Shanabi, and walk around. Inspect the foundation platform and scrutinize the brickwork. Testify that the bricks... testify that its bricks are baked bricks, and that the 7 counselors must have laid its foundations. 1 square mile is city, 1 square mile is orchards, 1 square mile is clay pits, as well as the open ground of Ishtar's temple. 3 square miles and the open ground comprise Uruk. If only I had left the puku in the carpenter's house today. Tablet 12. So we were reading 11. I feel like I skipped something. Damn, that was a long tablet. That was probably the longest tablet. I think this is the last tablet. I think this is where the story ends. That's kind of sad. So, I'm gonna take a little break. I hope I don't go to sleep. I really want